Greetings and salutations and welcome to Full Court Press, our February 19th edition, brought to you by The Game on News Talk 1400 and The Game Entertainment and Media. Scott Nason with you on this Saturday afternoon as we are joined by co-host Matt Johnson. And Matt, appreciate you joining us once again here on Full Court Press. I know your Bengals lost on Sunday. We'll talk about that coming up later, but other than that, how you doing today?
Well, it's taken a little bit to recover, but to tell you what, there was some pretty amazing basketball being played last night in the Eastern UP / Northern Michigan. Obviously, I think one of the big stories is going to be St. Ignace beating Rudyard, and I'll have a lot to say about that. But the other one was, I've just been, impressed, pleasantly, I shouldn't say pleasantly surprised because I think they're talented, but pleased with how the Sioux has been playing lately, and our next guest will be able to talk about that a little more.
Yes, indeed, Matt. Joining us on Full Court Press is Sault High junior guard Max Scott. Max, appreciate you taking time out and joining us on Full Court Press. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here, and yeah.
It's great to have you on, Max. And my first question is, let's talk about the game last night in Sheboygan. The Sault High Blue Devils knocked off the Sheboygan Chiefs by the score of 65-36. And Max, just tell our listeners a little bit about that game. You had to wait a few days to play after losing at Escanaba on Saturday. Just give us your thoughts on how that game went down in Sheboygan last night.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we had a good start, which that's kind of been our Achilles heel this year. We need a good start to kind of get us going. But, we started out well. We got 9-0 lead at the start, and we just kind of kept pushing it as the game went on. Campbell played well. Cup played well. I played pretty well. Seniors all gave a good part. Yeah, it was a good team win last night.
Yeah, and in the game, Sheboygan came out in one of my least favorite basketball things ever, a 2-3 zone.
Oh, God.
I don't ever see really high level teams just sitting in a 2-3 zone. But anyway, they sent the 2-3 zone. First thing off the bat, our guest here nails a three. And that's what you're going to get there's no way if you're sitting in that zone against a team that can shoot, you're not going to win. But Max, why don't you talk a little bit about your team this year? From my vantage point, I look at it and I see a lot of talent on that team and a lot of depth. So why don't you talk a bit about your team and some of the people who are on it?
Yeah, I think that's probably our biggest thing is we have so many guys that are capable of doing a lot of things. It's just a lot of nights we just got to have energy, and if we don't bring that energy, sometimes it doesn't work out in our favor. Like, I think Riley Cox plays a big part in our team. Like, when he's going, I really think it amplifies the rest of the guys. And Jake Davies, superstar out there with the energy. Also, I think Campbell's been playing well. He's very strong in the post. Carter Oshelski, he shoots the ball well. So does Dom Haller. Kep can finish pretty well. I think, overall, we're just a pretty solid team.
And Max, looking at your season so far, 8-9, you have a couple regular season games left before districts, and we'll talk about that coming up here later on. But just overall, 8-9, an up and down season. There's been some good moments. There's been some, tough moments as far as some losses. But just overall, where are you as far as how the team performed so far this season?
Yeah, I think 8-9 is a little disappointing for the amount of talent we have on our team. We've had a few games where we play awful, not ready to play at the start of the game, and kind of hits us halfway through the game. We battle second half, but it's usually not enough. So I think that for the most part, we do a good job, but there's definitely a few games like Escanaba. We got off to a terrible start. Some guy hit 7 threes in the first half. we just can't have that. And I think that's been the biggest part of most of our losses would be the start of the game. And if we can figure that out, I think we could be good going forward.
So one of the things that I will say, when you're coaching, one of the challenges sometimes is trying to figure out how you're going to best use your personnel. And, my last year that I coached in Pickford, I had a situation where like certain kids were good at certain things, but not other things. And it's not like you don't have designated hitters in basketball. You have to play both offense and defense. If you get a guy who can play both and do it well, you're set. You never have to take him off the floor. And with Max here, one of the things that I saw from the first game, I watched the first game, I was like, who the hell is that on defense? Because I was kind of standing at a distance from my television, and I was like, oh, that's Max. And I noticed the way you're playing defense, how hard you're playing on the ball. You had good technique that way. And I've seen what you've been doing on offense, so I think that you're really a complete player. My question to you, after the shower of compliments, is where did you talk about your basketball development? Like, when did you start like training in basketball? Who have been kind of influential people on you throughout your years in basketball?
So originally, before I moved up to the Sioux, I lived down in Detour. Went to a lot of their games as a little guy, kind of liked it. And then when we moved up to Cedarville from 2nd to 3rd grade, I really liked it. So I started playing around, Joey Duncan. I don't know if you remember him.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
He was a big part of who I watched growing up. I'd also say when I got to the Sioux, Tristan Johnson, Brandon Paul, they were also big influences on me. I saw the way that they played. They always played hard. Tristan shot the ball tremendously, and I kind of wanted to follow in that steps. And, Steph Curry's kind of the guy I like to play like. But, anyways. But, yeah, that's kind of who I'd monitor off of. But I've been developing my skills, just shooting when I can, practice, don't miss practice, always going hard at practice. I think in the last season, like coming into team camp, I was looking more of a second string point guard to Oshelski, but now I think that me and him together is a really good combo. So I think that I've been playing better basketball. My defense has improved tremendously. Definitely my energy, and yeah.
And I'll add one thing too. I think my philosophy in basketball actually is the team that makes the fewest mistakes is usually successful. And one of the reasons I think that you may have jumped some people there is you just don't make a lot of negative plays. The errors are what lose teams games. And, that's something that I've observed watching your season unfold. Go ahead, Scott.
Max Scott joining us on Full Court Press, junior guard for the Sault High Blue Devils boys basketball team. And Matt, it's been fun watching you on the court over the years, and I would agree with Matt's assessment there. You're certainly one of the bigger players on that Sault High team. The question I have for you this afternoon is, trying to balance athletics and academics. We don't talk about that maybe as much as we should on sports shows like this, but how has that been for you? You're a student athlete and certainly you have to make the grade. In addition, just dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic, having, your games taken away for a while and really your life changed, as a student athlete. Just a two-part question there. How have you been able to manage the academic portion of your basketball playing as well as just trying to get through this COVID-19 thing?
Yeah, I think that school, when we went and shut down, I didn't really think a thing of it. I didn't started out, didn't really do my work, but then I realized I still got to do it, so I got through that. I'd say it probably made me a little on the lazier side coming back into school, but since we've been in the last swing of things since last year, we had a few hiccups with shutdowns and not playing, but I mean, we got through it for the most part. School's not bad. Now school's great. Environment's great at school. So, yeah, I keep up with my studies and just try my best to do my best on and off the court.
So one of the things that coaches sometimes lament is a common criticism is the kids these days never, like, they don't know the game. Like, they don't watch sports because they're on, I don't know, they're watching TikTok or something. But, I'm out of curiosity, although I think I know some of the answer here, do you watch sports, and to what degree?
I'd say I'm a bit of a sport junkie. Yeah. I like watching every sport. Like when they were watching the Abbey Rock game in class and we had work in front of me, I could not focus on my work. I had to watch the hockey game.
Me too.
So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm a big fantasy football guy. I really like fantasy. Know you do too.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal, people listening. So, during the football season, full disclosure, we talk about it. I coach in the Sioux, and Max plays football, and sometimes during those defensive days, if he wasn't out there, and I would coach an offensive line, of course. Max is my buddy here, and we talk fantasy football pretty in depth, and he's pretty smart about it. And, so it was a leading question, but, one of the I just will tell, like, people listening and any I know we have some players who listen to these things. If you watch sports, like, you're seeing situations, you're learning the game. It's an intangible that I can't replace versus guys who are, like, learning it from scratch, and the only sports they experience is when they're actually playing, and they don't know the rules, they don't know strategy, like, it doesn't come as instinctive to them. So, I think Max, being kind of a sports junkie and being smart in general, like, that's an intangible that is very, very important. And that's something he shares in common with our last guest. We had Cam Peterson on last week, kind of the same way. So people who are listening, it does make a difference. Go ahead, Scott.
Definitely.
Max Scott joining us on Full Court Press, junior guard for the Sault High Blue Devil boys basketball team. And after that conversation, Max, I may be seeking out your advice for Matt's fantasy football league because I stunk this year. But my final question for you is 3 games left in the regular season, Max. You're at home against Petoskey on Tuesday, at Newberry on Friday, and then your final regular season game at home against Marquette. Certainly you want to get some good momentum going into your districts here coming in a couple weeks. What are you looking for as far as your final 3 games, starting with a good team in Petoskey at home on Tuesday?
Oh, yeah. Petoskey's always got a great program. They've stuck to us the last few years. We're definitely going to try our hardest out there. I think it's a game that if we play our high level of basketball, we can definitely win. Newberry, we played well against them last time. They're no team to take lightly, though, especially in their place. Still got to get it done. I think should take care of it there, but never can take them lightly. Marquette, obviously, we lost. Tough one there. I mean, got off to a rough start, like I said. I think at home, if we start out the way we want to, I really think could make the difference, and we could have a really good momentum swing heading into playoffs.
Well, I have a question for you. Who is going to be the number 1 pick in the fantasy football draft next year?
Oh, wow.
Ooh. I'd probably say it'd be between, I don't know what I'd say running backs wise, but receivers is definitely going to be up there this year with Debo having this insane year. Same with Cooper Kupp. And just like, even Jamar Chase had a crazy year. So I don't think he'll be a number 1 pick, but they'll definitely be top 5. And then running backs, probably. If McCaffrey's healthy, you never know. The hype's always building around him too, so we'll see. I'd say probably maybe Derrick Henry if he's healthy.
Listen, Max, you're making a mistake. Listen,
Who do you got?
Jonathan Taylor. That's the pick.
He did have a monster year, but got to do something in the playoffs, too.
Jonathan Taylor. That's the pick. End of story. Hey, serious question. Right. Serious question. Or it's not a question, more of a comment. Your team has a lot of depth. I see a lot of talent out there. I was a little early. I got a lot of heat, on this show because I had predicted you guys to beat the Rudyard. And my prediction was being talked about in the Rudyard locker room after the game and was being mocked mercilessly. But I do see it coming together now. We're pulling for you guys to have a strong finish here the rest of the way. And just good luck moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
Max Scott joining us on Full Court Press. Max, best of luck during the rest of the season and in the postseason, and thanks for joining us on this Saturday afternoon.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. Matt and I will continue this February 19th edition of Full Court Press here on the Game, Entertainment, and Media. And welcome back to this February 19th edition of Full Court Press as we cover the Eastern Upper Peninsula boys basketball scene. Scott Nason back with you along with Matt Johnson. And Matt, appreciate you setting up all these interviews with coaches and players. It's really been well received, and I've used several of those interviews on our Monday night show, The Game, on News Talk 1400. And, Max Scott, a great guest, and, he's a lot of fun to watch on the court. I really think his development over the past few years has been very good, especially on the defensive end. I've been watching him since middle school, as my son did play basketball for a time at that level. Just another a good kid and doing good things on the court.
Yeah, I like Max a lot. Like we were saying, I obviously when I coach football, I coach the offensive linemen, so I'm usually not like coaching him directly, but it's funny because we talk fantasy football a lot, and he's just really smart. That's the other thing, and it's just a lot of fun to be around. But I think that, like we were kind of talking about earlier, that intangible of having like smart kids who know the game, but then also the fact that he happens to be really athletic. He's quick, and you combine those things and it's just a recipe. Like I really wish, Scott, like would I have loved to, if I was coaching and have a player like that. I mean, that's what I'd love to have in a point guard. That's exactly like my prototypical guy I would like to have as a point guard.
Matt, let's look at the games from last night. And when we talked last week, we knew this was going to be the game of the week, and it's probably going to end up being the game of the year in boys basketball in the Eastern Upper Peninsula down at the A Zone in St. Ignace. As last night, the St. Ignace Saints topped the Rudyard Bulldogs in boys basketball in double overtime, 72-71, handing the Bulldogs their first loss of the season. The Saints now winners of 7 in a row, 12-4 on the year, 5-2 in the Straits Area Conference. Next week they'll be at home to Mackinac City on Tuesday, and then playing at Sheboygan also at home on Thursday. Rudyard now 15-1, 6-1 in the Straits Area Conference. They will travel to Sheboygan on Tuesday. A win in that game, and they will clinch the Straits Area Conference title for the second straight year. And they'll also be home to Pickford on Friday. A win will clinch the EUP conference for the Bulldogs, which they are almost certainly to do on both accounts. But, Matt, I didn't have a chance to watch the game. I was doing the Sioux Eagles hockey last night and saw the highlights and the score. Give our listeners your thoughts on the game of the year so far in the EUP.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I was communicating with some coaches last night and who didn't see the game because they had their own. And my comments, I thought it was the best UP basketball or Eastern UP basketball that I've seen in a decade.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say, like, it ended in double overtime, and it was a game-winning 3 that ended the game.
Wow. And
who was the guy who did it? Well, favorite of the show, favorite of mine, Ethan McLean.
Yes.
How many times on this show? I mean, John Madden and his all Madden team. If I had my all Matt Johnson team, he would be on it. And he hit. It was unbelievable. Now, what had happened in the game? Rudyard actually got out to a fast start. It looked like they were on the road early in the game to a decisive victory. And I too, by the way, Scott, I was like flipping between three games. I had that game going. I had Cedarville, Pickford a little bit just because, the homer in me was just wanting to keep up. And then also the Sioux game. But, Rudyard did get in some foul trouble as the game went on. Besteman fouled out. Mayer fouled out. That's always one of the keys. One of my old strategy for beating these kids in Rudyard was I always wanted to try and get Besteman fouled out.
Right.
And for a particular, it's even more important, to be honest, for a team like St. Ignace because they're at such a disadvantage when it comes to size compared to Rudyard. Talking, with you're communicating a little bit with Tracy today. I know that they were disappointed with some of the mistakes that they made in the game. I have to say though, on Rudyard's side, I'll point out two efforts that I thought were really solid. I thought Cam Peterson just played his guts out. He left it all in the court. I think he was exhausted by the end of it. Especially after Beston fouled out. He's really trying to push the thing, and it keeps going into overtime. I thought the overtimes were helping St. Ignace. Dylan McMillan for Rudyard. Talk about like off everyone's radar. Like he came in and made some key plays in the game, and it was something. But I want to say this, I think that if you're Rudyard, in many ways, this outcome, I know it hurts, but I think it might be a blessing because they're a team that has high goals, high expectations. And, I had a team like that 2 years ago. Our team, our 2019-2020 Pickford team, we won the conference, but more importantly, we were aiming to win a state championship. Of course, we'll never know how that would have went, but
right.
I never set a goal about our regular season record. And everything that we did was aimed towards the playoffs. So for instance, would it have helped us get a wider margin in some games against EUP opponents if we had pressed all the time? Yes, it would have. And people used to get in my ear, how come we're not doing that? And listen, I love the pressure. I love the pressure probably more than most coaches. But my point was, if you get into a state championship game, the teams know how to handle the ball. You're not going to win off a press. They're going to be able to handle the ball. So we did things to set up for the long term. It's almost a distraction when it's about the record. We saw Brimley in that situation a few years ago. And also, frankly, you get some kids who've just done a lot of winning. They're seniors. And how many times on the show have I said, I am amazed that Rudyard does not rest on their laurels, that they keep playing hard. Well, they're human, and sometimes the effort can drop off a little bit when you start to just kind of take it for granted. So when you lose, it kind of lights a fire under everybody. So especially this late when we're getting close to March, we're in the playoffs. I know that it's not what they wanted. They tried everything they could to win. But if I'm sitting there, if I'm Jimmy Suggett, if I'm Tracy Peterson, if I'm able to step back, I'm saying this was the best thing for us because this will tell our kids if we ever have a night where we don't bring our A game or if we are making mental mistakes during the game, we actually can lose. It's not just a foregone conclusion that we'll win. So I do think that it'll set them up for future success. Coach Ingalls, who we had on, listen, Doug puts his heart and soul in it. He's been preparing for this game. Would you want to play St. Ignace right now?
Not at all.
God, They are a very, very dangerous team that's playing their tails off. So, congratulations to them. It's one of those memorable games for them.
Yeah, you brought up 2 points I brought up this morning on Coach's Corner with Dave Watson, Matt. Obviously, no question, a big win for the St. Ignace Saints, one to build on as they head into the postseason. They'll play in Division III, so they won't be playing Rudyard or Pickford or any of those teams. And, I agree 100% with you. Sometimes adversity is not a bad thing when you've been cruising along. And certainly, the players and coaches, like you said, wanted to win, but I think you hit the nail on the head with, a little adversity. Sometimes you need that on a season where you've pretty much cruised pretty much throughout the season. And now, maybe you're starting to question some things, certainly not questioning the effort or the talent or anything, but, things didn't go their way last night with the foul trouble and, St. Ignace making the shots when they needed to. So I agree with you. I think that if there's such a thing as a good loss, Matt, that was probably one for the Rudyard Bulldogs. And you want to lose in February, not March in boys basketball.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's some of the other games last night. We talked about this one with Max Scott. Sault High knocks off Sheboygan on the road, 65-36. Blue Devils now 8-9 on the season, 4-3 in Straits Area Conference play. They will be home to Petoskey on Tuesday and at Newberry on Friday. You can hear Friday's game over on 1230 WSO with Casey Cook from Newberry. Cedarville Detour, they kept their faint EUP title hopes alive on Friday night as they ran past Pickford at the Purple Palace, 74-58. The Islanders now 7-8 overall, 6-3 in the EUP conference. They will be at Hillman on Tuesday, home to the International Academy of Flint on Thursday, and also home to Engadine on Friday. Pickford now 1-13 on the year. They are home to Stevenson this afternoon, this being a Saturday, home to Ellsworth on Wednesday, and then at Rudyard on Friday. One other game last night, Brimley improves to 7-8 on the year as they topped Engadine at home last night, 75-52. Brimley, they are at Gaylord St. Mary's on Monday and home to the International Academy of Flint on Thursday. While Engadine now 1-14 on the year, they will be home to Mackinac City on Monday, at Cedarville Detour on Thursday, and then at Pickford on Friday. One other game this afternoon, Stevenson is at Newberry. Matt, you mentioned flipping around and catching some of the action of other games. Anything you want to comment on last night's games?
Yeah, I thought the Sioux was really sharp against Sheboygan. I thought that I just, like I said, I'm all about my program was motion offense, man-to-man defense, strategic pressuring, and they came out with this 2-3, and it's just, I just think the 2-3 zone is just a loser of a defense.
Yeah,
like if I was AD and I was interviewing a coach and they were telling me what their strategy was, and they said, well, we're going to be more of a 2-3 zone team. No, thank you. I'd hire someone else. I get that there might be limited situations where one might be in it. I didn't even use it at all. And it's just, we had a very easy time. It's the easiest thing in the world coming up with a zone offense that beats it. You're going to get wide open shooters, and the Sioux just put on a clinic, and it's destined to fail. I will say that. If a team's playing the Sioux and they're going to 2-3 zone, it's not going to work. Looking at the Pickford and Cedarville Detour game, you look at it and you see a pretty decisive Cedarville Detour victory. But I will say that they do have something to be concerned about in that they really did not have a very strong answer to the advantage that Pickford had in the post. They had George and Jacob Eddington, who have a significant size advantage over anyone that's on the Islanders team. And early on, they just wasn't an answer. Now, I have to say, I thought Kason Smith, for the Cedarville kid, was pretty much like solely responsible for them being in that situation, for them coming back and then taking the lead. Like, he was making plays at a time when no one else was, and he really, I think if I was a voter, if I was still coaching, I'd make him first team all conference for sure. He's one of the best. He might be the best player that's not on Rudyard's team in the UP conference. And he was a big time player last night. For Pickford, they've had moments in games where they played better, and they have to try and figure out what is causing the big changes in games. How could we play really well for a quarter and then not? Well, two things I think to look at there. One is it a conditioning issue? You know what I mean? Are you running out of gas? I don't know. I mean, that's for them to evaluate. The next has to do with rotation and who's playing. Now, it's been well documented on this show. I told in the past the war stories and everything else, the problems that I had with some parents over there about playing time. And frankly, some of them should be really happy right now because, kids are getting a lot of playing time. They're 1 and 13. There's certain lineups that do better for them. And I think that you owe it to your kids to give them the best chance to win. And, you know what? Are some people going to not be happy with that? Yeah. But you know what? Tough luck. That's pretty much where it needs to be, because if you're going to win in the tournament, you have to put your best kids out there. They have to be in shape and executing at a high level the whole time. Can Pickford win in the district? Can they beat Cedarville Detour? The answer is yes. We beat them. We beat Cedarville last year. Pretty much the same kids. In this game, could Pickford have won this game last night? Yes. They just have to have the right lineup in there, in shape, and not making mistakes.
Looking at the games that were played earlier this week, Matt, and boys basketball, St. Ignace knocked off Brimley Monday night, 89-31. On Wednesday, Rudyard over Cedarville Detour, 69-52. Newberry, they knock off Pickford on Wednesday night at home, 62-56. And Engadine, they fall at home to Manistee on Wednesday, 52-31. Looking at the Straits Area Conference standings, the Rudyard Bulldogs in first place, 6-1. And they need a win at Sheboygan, very likely next week, to clinch another Straits Area Conference title. St. Ignace in second place at 5-2. Sault High in third, 4-3. Sheboygan fourth, 2-4. And Newberry in fifth place, 0-7. Rudyard, they lead the EUP Conference with a 7-0 record, one more win, and that's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. And they will clinch the EUP Conference title once again. Cedarville Detour in second at 6-3. Newberry in third, 5-3. Brimley fourth place in the EUP Conference at 4-4. Pickford 1-7 and in fifth place. Engadine in sixth place at 0-6. We have 2 weeks left in the regular season. We know the teams and the districts they will play in, but we don't know the matchups as of yet. We will get them, I believe, at the end of next week, and certainly Matt and I will talk about them coming up over the next couple weeks here on Full Court Press. Matt, one of the things we wanted to talk about here today before we get to War Stories with Matt Johnson is, who is the next varsity boys basketball head coach? The next big thing, the big name. You can put yourself in the mix there, Matt, if you're interested, but according to Matt Johnson, you're former athletic director. You know what it takes to hire the best. Who's the next big varsity boys basketball coach in the area?
I'm going to answer you that question in 1 minute. Before I do that, I want to say, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you had mentioned those games earlier in the week. Mm-hmm. And Newberry was playing a dog of a game against Pickford, but they came back and won. Part of it was the Bastolfi kid from Italy. But another guy who is a favorite of the pod is Marco Juarez.
Yes.
I really thought he was a difference in their win against Pickford handling the ball. This was, I think, a Wednesday the game was. So, I told Kenny that after. I said, I thought that Juarez was kind of the difference in that game. So, congratulations to him on that. And also Sheboygan had played Sheboygan had played Rudyard tough on Wednesday. But, yes, who is the next varsity coach? If I was an athletic director, who would I hire? This is an easy question for me. First of all, I'm going to exclude myself from this conversation.
Very good.
Not that I'm not going to coach again, because I very well may, but I'm just not talking about myself in this situation. If I was hiring, it's an easy thing, and it's someone who I actually have hired, because I had to, when I looked and said, who would I hire as a JV coach? And he is by far the highest, best performing JV coach right now. And he's in Pickford. Nick Zweifel.
Ah.
Yeah. Nick is getting rave reviews right now. You hear it not only you hear it among players, you hear it in the building right now with school officials, and somehow you hear it with he gets it from parents in Pickford. And part of it is it's a combination of both being, he's strategic, like he understands basketball and he understands sports in general, and he was a very exceptional athlete himself. You hear his name when they read off their records in track, like he has the UP record,
right?
But he also is his personality is such where he can get along with a lot of different types of people. He's not someone who alienates people. He seems to have an emotional intelligence with kids where he kind of understands what they're thinking and is able to communicate it in a way where they feel like they're being taught, and not just kind of like yelled at and scolded at for no reason. He puts the work in. He makes a lot of, I have phone calls with him all the time, and they're like the nuts and bolts of basketball. He's just interested in feedback. He's interested in critical feedback. And the thing about Nick is, like, this is a no-brainer, I'm telling you, for anyone who is trying to do it. He doesn't live in Pickford. I believe he lives in Kinross right now. So, like, if I'm any of these places, if I'm, whoever, whether Brimley, Sioux, Roger, Pickford, if they ever have an opening, that's where I'm going. Now, I do know that he does enjoy coaching in Pickford, and he's actually really helpful with Steve. Steve is the coach there now, and Nick, to his credit, really is a real good soldier as far as like anything he can try and do to be helpful. Obviously, he has his own team to manage. He tries to do. So Nick and I are friends, like obviously in full disclosure, and he didn't know that I was doing this. So when I say this, I'm not saying that he's looking to leave there. He hasn't said that, but I'm telling you, if I was an AD somewhere else, I'd like Adam if I was an AD anywhere, to be honest with you. Here's the difference, I would say, because my coaching staff that I had in Pickford, I had some really good coaches. And I had Mike Collins, who was with me, and Mike's doing a hell of a job right now with the Pickford 8th grade. They're crushing everyone. And I got Nick in. So the difference would be a little bit between those two guys. It's like, and I'd hire Mike too, by the way. Like Mike, he runs my system and he runs it well. Like they run motion, they run man, they pressure, they're aggressive that way. Nick, I think he, in general, shares a lot of the views, but he's not as pure of like a my system guy. Like he can be a variety of systems. Now I believe that my system is the best way, motion offense, man-to-man defense. But like Nick is with Steve right now and they do different things. I'm trying to say it's like he could go somewhere else. Like I could see a situation of what I would float an idea. I'd like to see him paired with one of these really good coaches like an Ingles or, working with Tracy Peterson or something like I just think that would be a winning combination. So that's my big move. If I'm an AD, I'm making it happen, Scott. I'm not sitting around waiting to see how it shakes out, see who applies. I think that the best ADs with these high profile positions, they don't just settle for whatever comes in. If they are serious about building a winning team, they go out and make it happen.
So there you have it. Matt Johnson giving a full endorsement to Nick Zweifel, the junior varsity coach at Pickford. And I would agree with you, Matt. I've known him about as long as I've known you for my days in Rudyard. And, obviously his coaching resume speaks for itself. He's doing a great job with that JV program. But a lot of the other things that you mentioned there, he just seems like a really good fit for any varsity basketball program, not just with his basketball and athletic capabilities and knowledge, but also the intangibles, being able to have a good to be able to relate to the student athlete. I think Nick does a real good job at that, and certainly I would agree with you 100% that he would be a good varsity coach somewhere in the near future. Scott Nason and Matt Johnson with you for this February 19th edition of Full Court Press. And Matt, it's time for one of our most popular segments on Full Court Press, War Stories with Matt Johnson, as Matt shares his coaching and athletic director experiences over the past few years. So Matt, what's on deck for this show?
Well, this is a little, I guess it's lighter, but at the time it felt like it might not be light. I'm going really far back, Scott, because I believe when this story happened, this is a coaching story, but it's not a basketball story. I actually think that you were the athletic director in Rudyard when this happened.
Oh, wow.
So we're going back. 2011, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So I was an assistant football coach. I was assisting my good friend, Pat Maloney, who, by the way, speaking of like someone who's a stud of a coach, that guy.
Yes.
But anyway, I was assisting Pat, and we were playing in Rogers City. And for those who've not been to Rogers City for a football game, the locker room, first of all, it's a long walk from the field, but you have to walk past this dark field, like the length of a football field in pitch black, to get to this little closet of a locker room, and you're jammed in there. You're uncomfortable. It's probably the worst setup for a visiting team to have to go to. Well, at that time, apparently I don't know if it was a back and forth type situation, but there was some tradition, short-term tradition, that Rudyard kids had been signing their name on the locker room wall. Now, you hear that and you think, well, that sounds egregious. That sounds like you're desecrating property. And I tend to agree with you, except you haven't seen the Rogers City football locker room. Yes, you should not do that, but it's like kind of desecrating a dumpster, how would you be able to tell whether the new graffiti matches the old?
Right.
Yeah. But we didn't know, of course, that they had done this, but they did. And it's the only time in the history of coaching that I have had this happen. We went to the Rogers City McDonald's. We're sitting there waiting for our food. I'm sitting there at the back of the line with Pat. I always tried to do that, by the way, go to the back of the line, let kids go first.
Yep, good. You're very polite.
Yeah. We're reviewing the game, as coaches will do. And all of a sudden, bursting through the McDonald's door is Pat Lamb. And for those who don't know who Pat Lamb is, he was the longtime, very successful wrestling coach at Rogers City, and he was their athletic director.
I remember well.
He was a very colorful character. I can't always repeat some of the quotations from Pat Lamb. for this program, and we don't even have a rating on this program, but it's not like rated PG, but he was very colorful. Anyway, he's like nose to nose with Pat, like, and all of a sudden they're having this conversation. I'm like, are these two going to fight in the parking lot? Cause I got to tell you, Pat Lamb kind of seemed like a badass, and Pat Maloney, I would not want to fight either because I've seen him.
Not at all.
No, and he could get rage like no other as well. So I'm like, these are going to be a couple of bulls going at it here. And all of a sudden, Pat Maloney is leaving with Pat Lamb. I'm like, where the hell are they going? Like, we're going to see him again? And I guess he made them. They went to the field. They left the McDonald's and went to the field, and they had to review the situation. I don't know if administration got involved, but Rogers City was defensive going into it. So it's the first time I've ever had rival AD drag a coach out of the McDonald's and make him go. And thankfully for, it would have been a couple of superheroes colliding if those two had fought. I don't think it got physical between the two guys. Pat Maloney was genuinely surprised by the whole thing. And, of course, we were kind of in a better spirits because we had won the game.
I remember that well, Matt. I literally was just coming on board at the time, and I remember the first Straits Area Conference athletic director meeting, that being brought up by the aforementioned gentleman that you mentioned. And I'm like, guys, I wasn't even here. I'm still in the Sioux. I have no idea what's going on. So I will say this, Matt, if it's a battle of Maloney's, I'm taking on Herb, certainly not Pat. I might have a better chance against Herb if I get a word in edgewise on him.
Oh,
we love Herb. Yes, indeed. Matt, before we end our broadcast, we focus obviously on EUP boys basketball, but you as a Bengals fan, I'll tell you what, I was pulling for the Bengals. I actually had a bet of the final score being 20-16 Bengals, and man, it was getting close, but the LA Rams win the Super Bowl. Certainly some questionable calls at the end after 58 minutes of basically nothing being called. You've had a few days, almost a week to reflect on it. I did a wellness check Thursday. I figured you needed some time to yourself for a few days, but just your thoughts on the Super Bowl. Cincinnati, obviously nothing to hang their head about, and the LA Rams, Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, it was a situation where it kind of felt like going into it, we were playing with house money. No one thought the Bengals would get there this year. But once you're there, you start to realize all it takes to get there, everything has to go right. And this is a loaded AFC. Yep. So you, with a young team, you think, well, we'll be here again, but will you? Dan Marino didn't return. Everything has to fall right. So you want to take advantage while you're there. Listen, I think that the pass interference call against Logan Wilson was garbage. It was 3rd and goal.
I agree.
A holding call they called on Logan Wilson, who I thought was playing one hell of a game. It would have been 4th and goal from like the 8-yard line or 9-yard line. And that's a whole different proposition. And especially when they hadn't been calling it going into it. A lot of criticism on for the Bengals coach Taylor on Joe Mixon being out of the game and handing it to Samaje Perine on the 3rd and long, and then Mixon being out again in the 4th down. We talked about that last week. I was saying, why did he Mixon out of the game? And little did I know. But he actually answered. I will say this for Coach Taylor. One of the things I admire about him, he takes responsibility for things.
He does. Yep.
He does not do what Urban Meyer did when he was asked, like, why was James Robinson out? He said, I don't know why they did that. Like, he's an observer. Taylor said the running back coach wanted to put in Mixon, and the clock was going, so he said just leave him in. He took responsibility for it, and I think that's what a leader does. I think he's a terrific coach. I'm disappointed by the outcome, but I just thought those guys played their tail off. It was a hell of a fun time this season, and I'm excited about next year and the years to come.
Absolutely. Scott Nason and Matt Johnson with you for this February 19th edition of Full Court Press. Matt, appreciate all the insight, comments, and getting our guest, Max Scott, on the show. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll do this again next week. Just a little programming note. We'll be doing Full Court Press next Sunday, the 27th, as I have other engagements on Saturday. So Matt and I will be recording the version of next week's show on Sunday. Matt, appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next Sunday for our next edition of Full Court Press.
All right, Scott, have a good week.
You as well, sir. I want to thank our special guest, Max Scott, along with co-host Matt Johnson. We'll be playing the interview with Max Scott on Monday night's edition of The Game on News Talk 1400 every Monday night from 6 to 8 o'clock. And you can find this broadcast. Obviously, if you're listening, you have found this broadcast, but you can find it on the website, thegamesportshow.podbean.com, or just use your favorite podcast platform and type in The Game Sports Show. You can find this show among several others all on that channel. For Matt Johnson, my name is Scott Nason. We'll talk to you next Sunday for our next edition of Full Court Press here on The Game, Entertainment and Media.